Hey everyone, it's the first week of April, which means it's time for the March wrap-up of the 2012 book challenge. The first thing I read in March was Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life, which is the first graphic novel in the Scott Pilgrim series. It's by Brian Lee O'Malley. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's basically a story about a boy who falls in love with this girl and then has to defeat her 7 evil exes in order to win her love. If you've seen the movie is a pretty direct adaptation of at least the first book, but I definitely enjoyed reading the graphic novel quite a bit even after having seen the movie. The graphic novel, personally, for me at least, had a lot more depth than the movie. The next thing that I read in March was A Flight of Angels by Rebecca Guay. I talked about this in a review last week. It's basically the story of an angel who falls to earth from heaven, and there's a bunch of fae that find him and tell a bunch of different stories involving angels in order to determine his fate. I gave Flight of Angels 5 out of 5 stars. It was a really beautifully drawn piece of work, and I love the story, and I just think it's really, really fantastic. If you want to hear more about that, click up here and it'll take you to the video. The next thing that I read after that was A Step from Heaven by Ann Na. It was actually a part of my adolescence and cultural diversity class. It's about a girl and her family who move from Korea to the United States, and their struggles as immigrants and her struggles growing up in a very strict traditional Korean family while also having the American culture kind of moving into her life. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. One of my favorite things about it is actually Ann Na's writing style. The book starts out when Youngju, the main character, is 4, and the way the writing is done, it sounds very much like you're being told a story by a very young child, and as Youngju ages and goes through her teen years, her voice keeps growing and evolving, and so you always feel like you're actually talking to her almost. The next thing I read was Undiscovered Girl by Allison Burnett. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. It's told as though you're reading a blog, so it is actually very much like opening LiveJournal and just reading straight through someone's archived entries. When the main character starts her blog, she's 17. She has a boyfriend who is around her age. She's like a freshman in college. She's also dating who she says is a 32-year-old college professor, which is kind of hit or miss as to whether or not he is, as she admits in the very first entry that she is going to be changing details to keep some anonymity for all the people involved. The main character is really not likable. There were moments when I just wanted to reach through the pages and just slap her upside the head. The main redeeming quality of this book was the ending. I think was really surprising and very, very well done. After Undiscovered Girl, I read Pandemonium, which is the second book in the Delirium series by Lauren Oliver. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Really, really loved it. Actually loved it a lot more than the first book in the series, which is called Delirium. The Delirium series is a dystopian future where love is basically a disease. I think it's called the deliria nervosa. Basically, the emotion, the ability to love is removed from your brain, and therefore kind of makes it so that you have no passion about things, and you're content but never happy. It follows the story of one particular girl named Lena, and I don't really want to say too much about Pandemonium specifically because it'll give away things about Delirium, but it was a really nice continuation of the story. There was a lot of action in it. The next thing I read was The Disreputable History of Frankie Landau-Banks by E. Lockhart. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. Frankie is a young girl who's going to a boarding school in New England, and she ends up dating this boy named Matthew, who is a member of an all-male secret society, and she starts pulling off these different pranks kind of in the name of the society to prove that that girls can do anything as well as guys, and that she's kind of just trying to prove herself to Matthew that she's not someone to be ignored. She's not just a pretty face. The intentions behind what she does somewhat honorable, except for the fact that she's just doing it to impress a boy to some extent, which is kind of infuriating and just a little Next thing I read was This Beast, Habibi by Craig Thompson, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I am absolutely in love with this book. It's a graphic novel about a girl and a boy who live somewhere in the Middle East. I don't think it's ever really said, and they're both basically sold in and out of different forms of slavery throughout the book, and they keep coming back together. Starts out where she kind of raises him as a somewhat sisterly figure, and then when they come back together as adults, they end up in kind of a romantic type relationship. This book has some of the most beautiful artwork I have ever seen in a graphic novel, especially when you look at the aspects of traditional Arabic art that he took the time to learn. One of the other things I really liked about Habibi was that some of the side stories in this book actually involve kind of little lessons about the history of Islam and a little bit of Judaism and Christianity as well, which those were some of my favorite parts personally, because they kind of gave me little glimpses into things that I wasn't really aware of in the past. It's just completely worth it. Definitely pick up Habibi. Check it out. It is awesome. The next thing I read was The Looking Glass Wars by Frank Better. It's the first novel in the Looking Glass Wars. I think it's a trilogy. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. The Looking Glass Wars is basically a retelling of the classic Alice in Wonderland story by Lewis Carroll. One of the things that I really appreciate that Better did with this book is that within the prologue, he kind of explains how this story and the original tie together. Next thing I read was Winter Girls by Laurie Halse Anderson. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Fair warning before you pick up Winter Girls, there are some triggers in this book, specifically if you have an eating disorder or if you have issues with cutting. Just keep that in mind when you're contemplating whether or not you want to check this out. Winter Girls is about a girl named Leah who suffers from anorexia and is also a cutter. At the beginning of the book, her best friend Cassie is found dead in a hotel room, and throughout the book she's just kind of trying to deal with what happened and also deal with her own personal issues that are going on. I really enjoyed Anderson's writing style. There are some parts where, as the narrator is going through and talking about what's going on, the text has a strike through it, and kind of as though the narrator is just trying to get these ideas out of her own head, and I found that kind of interesting, where you could see where her thoughts were going and where she was trying to stop them. I thought that was a really nice touch to things. As the last thing that I read in March was The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Eric Shanar and Scotty Young. This is put out by Marvel Comics. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I'm a Wizard of Oz junkie, which is why I originally picked this up, but I did end up being a little bit disappointed by it. The authors really didn't bring anything unique to it. It is a pretty strict retelling of the original novel, so it was definitely enjoyable, not necessarily something that I'm looking to pick up the rest of the series. I think I'm just kind of gonna let that one go and just stick with the original. To tally it up, I read 10 books in the month of March, which put my 2012 total up to 27 books, which is 36% of the way through my 75 book goal, which is awesome since we are only 25% of the way through the year. If you have any questions or if you would like a more in-depth review of any of the books I talked about in this video, you can leave a comment in the comment section down below. There are also links to each of these books down in the description box down there. That's all for the March wrap-up. Keep your eyes open over the next few days. I should have another video up for book suggestions for if you like The Hunger Games, either if you like the movie or the book. This will work either way. So keep your eyes open for that, and I will see you guys later.